Welcome back, everyone, to another H&K video game experience. This is Hollywood Cole here, and we have Clearfire on the other side there. What's going on, man?
Not much, man. Just long days.
Yeah, it has been a long week. A lot of bad stuff going on in America with the hurricane and whatnot. But we're going to try to bring you guys a little bit about some retro game systems. We're kind of in the dead zone, so to speak, for Destiny 2's coming out Wednesday, right?
Yeah, it drops Wednesday, and of course we won't have enough time to throw together a podcast after playing it, so we're going to try to get, we might have a little gap between podcast or times that we actually have a podcast talking about Destiny, but it'll give us a little time to actually play it and get our first impressions together, but yeah. We'll throw this retro stuff together for y'all guys so you can kind of get an idea and an idea of where our history is in gaming and all of our stuff, what we like to do, what we used to like to do, and what we grown up playing. Yeah,
we can satiate your appetite for the H&K experience that you guys are dying for. And so there we go. It's funny you talk about Wednesday. My boss, we were talking about the hurricane and about going on while everybody's kind of having a long week and whatnot. And so I got to work tomorrow, which is Saturday, Sunday. I'm off Monday, Tuesday. I'm off Wednesday, though. I don't know. Never mind. However it is, I'm off Wednesday. And my boss is off Wednesday. We always talk about Destiny. And I'm like, I see what you did there, man. That's right. When he just said, you getting it? I was like, covered. Yeah, we get it. So anyway, it's funny.
Hopefully I'll be done laying some flooring so I can get on Destiny on day of. Hopefully my game gets here to my house because of course I had to pre-order it and get it delivered, and I did 1 day shipping. Hopefully GameStop gets them all out on the 5th, and so that way it'll drop to my house on the 6th. If not, I'm gonna be pretty upset, but hey, you know what, it is what it is, and I'll get some play in before I can get another recording of this down.
Oh yeah, dude, I'll be at the game store waiting 10 o'clock in the morning. Why
wait till 10 o'clock in the morning? Why don't you do the 9 o'clock at night thing, man? They're doing the late thing.
Oh, are they?
Oh, yeah.
I actually think I'm working at night.
GameStop is dropping it late, so they're going to stay open until midnight. At least some stores around here are. So yeah. You could actually probably stop by and pick up a copy then if you wanted to. I mean, heck, you can probably even go by Target or Walmart. They're open till, Target's open till 10, 11 o'clock at night in some places, and then Walmart's open 24/7. You can just pick up a copy there if you just want the basic copy. Because really,
I just want the basic. Yeah,
that's about the only thing you're gonna be able to grab. But yeah, you can do it at one of those places.
Yeah. So whatever the case, man, we just wanted to give you guys we didn't want to just throw something together after the first day, but we want to get the next week. We're gonna come out with more of a kind of first thoughts, first impressions of Destiny. Probably play it for 2 or 3 days, see what we get into. I don't know if anybody will be to the raid then. In fact, don't they wait to release the raid like?
Well, actually, either yesterday or this morning or sometime recently, the past couple of days, they actually released the dates they're going to release the raid. And if I'm not mistaken, it's September 13th that they're actually going to make the raid active.
Yeah, so that's the week after. So we won't have then the week after that we can do the raid review or something. I don't know. We're trying to bring you guys a little bit something other than Destiny, but I'm excited about this one. I'm a retro game collector. So I'm excited about this kind of retro game system, this podcast here, and kind of get into a couple games. But we all started playing together we were actually just talking about this for the podcast. We kind of started, we both had a regular Nintendo, the regular NES, but we don't really remember playing together on NES that much. I remember playing it a lot. We had, with Contra and was one of our favorite ones. Actually, believe it or not, there's no way to prove it now, but I actually finished Contra without dying a single time. A friend of ours, I won't say his name on here, but he can attest to it if you ever see me, and I'll tell you later. But he saw me do it, and so we played that game so often. That's how much. That's how
I remember that one.
Yeah, and a lot of old NES games. Of course, Zelda. I never played Zelda 2 that much.
I actually played it a decent bit, but I never really just dug deep into it. It was always just surface of that game. I mean, I liked it and it was okay, but I just didn't do a first dive on that one.
And I think a lot of people just played the surface because when you had the original Zelda out, and it was this wide open world that you could go anywhere, but people could seem to that formula for that game was just so perfect because you could kind of dive in, but you could kind of figure it out, obviously, because people did it. And but Zelda 2 was for whatever reason it was just so the dog is I can't even concentrate. It's funny, man. But yeah, a stranger outside or something.
I believe it's my dog.
It's not my dog. I don't have a dog.
I've got 2 dogs, and one of them he's a little sassy, so you'll have to. No,
it's all good. I was trying to hold back a laugh, man.
That's all good.
But anyway, so Zelda 2, it just didn't really click the same, and I guess everybody was expecting it to be like Zelda 1, the first Zelda, and so just as top down, you walk around, you see the enemies kind of pop up and move around and disappear, and nobody really understood the experience, and it's just. It's the exact same thing as like Rambo. You ever notice that? Remember that Rambo game?
Yeah, I do remember the Rambo game, but it's like with the Legend of Zelda, they kind of tried to push it into a new environment, and I don't think it worked for them. I mean, that's just kind of how I felt because the first Zelda was fantastic. That full open world, run around, do whatever you need to do. You can figure it out and have fun with it. And then just having that little different twist into the second one, just kind of. It just didn't make it as fun for me.
Yeah, I think they tried something new. They really didn't know what they had. There was no standard, at that time for Zelda or any game. Everybody was just trying to figure this out. Mm-hmm. But that was a great one, man. I mean, and I went back and finished Zelda 2, and I enjoyed it. I used a guide, and I went back and finished it on the Wii Virtual Console at some point. And I actually did that for a lot of games. But but anyway.
Speaking of Zelda 2, just so y'all know, if you don't know, it was actually released in 1986. So this kind of shows you how old some of us are. And the actual Nintendo, I didn't realize it was this. It was actually released
83.
Yeah, it was released in 83.
Check out when Zelda 1 was released.
Zelda 1 was 86.
Zelda 1 was 86. Okay,
yeah,
so
86.
when was Zelda? It says Zelda 2 was 86.
No, Zelda 1 was 86. Mario Brothers was actually 1985, and just for some, great little data here, I've got a timeline pulled up. It actually was the best-selling game until 2008, and it sold 40 million copies. So that just shows you how kind of Nintendo kicked the revolution off right there, because anything before it really wasn't that big.
But it also the Nintendo came with Mario, and that counts toward those numbers too.
Exactly.
So if you were going to play any other game, you had to buy Mario. So
well, I mean, it
not
doesn't
to discredit it, but it does count those. I mean, that was kind of this big debate that I've heard on a few others. That should that count? But I mean, you did sell those games, and you got to be silly to think that not having Mario in there did not sell a lot of systems. That was the killer app,
Yeah, and I guess just looking at this because it said 62 million units sold of the NES. I guess that's where the Mario picks it up, So you're looking at basically 22 million copies of the NES without Mario, 40 million. Add another 40 million to get your 62 million with Mario. So right. I mean, Mario was a great game. So
absolutely. So I was going to ask you, when does Zelda 2 come out? I'm just curious to see.
I don't have that one on the radar right here, but I will. I'll look it up and I'll tell you before the end of the podcast. So.
Okay. It's 87. I just looked it up. So it's 1 year late. It's actually January 1987. So 1 year. Not even a year, because Legend of Zelda 1 came out February 21st, 1986. So within a year, a whole new sequel was released.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that now?
No, I mean it wouldn't. It would never happen now. But I mean that was kind of the trend back then, because I remember also too looking back and watching some of the watching some videos too. Like I watched the. If you haven't seen it yet, the documentary on how the Atari died, about the E.T. game that eventually just was the killer of the Atari. Go check it out. Great video. It was fantastic. I loved it. It was just great seeing this thing of them trying to find what happened and everything. And that game got developed, if I'm not mistaken, in like 3 months.
Yeah, you know? they had a hard release date.
And so finished. Yeah, it wasn't a finished game. There were so many errors in it. I mean, it had the pit that if you jumped over, you automatically fell and you could not get out. It was game breaking. But it just shows you back then they had a lot of short times to release games, because I'm looking here at some of these popular games. 85 was Mario, 86 was Zelda, then 87 was Mega Man, and you're looking at that. I mean, Mega Man was also Street Fighter, Metal Gear, Final Lap, Castlevania, Contra, Final Fantasy, Phantasy Star, and Maniac Mansion. I mean, that's all in 87. That's a ton of games in 1 year. And then Zelda in 86, you had Outrun, Bubble Bobble, Dragon Quest, and Metroid. I mean, those are some really classic games right there, and some really, like, genre-defining games as well. I mean, you've got Dragon Quest in there, you know, Final Fantasy in there. Those really, you know, started off a big genre right there in itself.
So let's talk about this for a second, because this is what I've been studying. So I know I'm going to get a lot of information wrong, and probably get somebody to tell me that, I'm sure, and it's fine. But so the Atari, you know, it came out as a video game thing. It's a big hit at first. You know, everybody loved it, and so everybody was trying to get on this bandwagon train, and all these different developers and publishers were just dropping any game they could to get out there. It flooded the market. There was no way to tell which games were good games, which games were bad games. They had the box art. Some box art looked like the game, some of it didn't, you know, so you didn't know what you were going to get. And so it just flooded the market, and people would buy crappy games, and they would just get tired of it. And ET was the nail in the coffin, as you said. All right, Nintendo comes out, and they call it the Nintendo Entertainment System, because that's what they wanted. They wanted the Nintendo video game system. But after this big crash, everything, you're crazy. This is done. You know, video games were a fad; they're done. But so they called it the Nintendo Entertainment System, and so they released what was it, Bob or Rob? I can't remember, the robot. I can't remember. I should know that, but whoever that came with it, the Gyromite game, to make the Zapper and this whole thing, to make it look like it's not a video game system; it's a entertainment system. In fact, you know, that's why the Famicom, the Famicom and the regular NES. The one that we got in America, they look different.
Yeah.
Because the Famicom is a top loader, and it looks just like an Atari, so they wanted to slide the game like a VCR. That's the whole reason they designed it with a front loader like that. That's pretty cool. Nintendo had a crazy hold on the market, and it's illegal to do what they did now for developers, but they made it, only developers could only release 5 games per year. And so think about that for a minute. If you're a developer and you can only release 5 games, or you're going to release your best games, because that's where you're going to capitalize on it. So they that guaranteed that they were going to get the best games released from each one of these developers, and that's where you get, you know, like Konami and Ultra. They're both the NES, or both Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right? So they got a little subsidiary company. And they're called Ultra, and that's how they got to release extra games. But they put that hold on there. They made it to where, and they made it to where you got to buy your cartridges from us, you know, the lockout chip and so on and so forth. And we could spend a whole episode on Nintendo about this whole thing. But that was the thing I wanted to bring that up, is because of how the market got flooded and how it came back with the Nintendo. And Nintendo did revolutionize not only with their quality system, but their business, you know, mechanics that they had in place. You know, that's really kind of what helped it launch again.
Well, I mean, they had a brilliant business model for almost dead sector of this video gaming. You know, because I mean, video gaming pretty much had died. You know, the Atari basically crashed out almost by this time, and it was just tanking. And really, the only big market you had for video games was in Japan. In the U.S., it was just kind of sketchy at this point. You know, yeah, you had like your big video game machines that you would find that would have your Pac-Man and all of that, but home entertainment was just kind of, you know, it's kind of dead, almost dead in the water at the time for that. And so that they came in and actually, with their business plan and business strategy, actually really changed it and made a great run at this, and actually, if it wasn't for them, we probably wouldn't be gaming like we are now.
Oh no, so, yeah, no doubt. So anyway, I grew up with the Nintendo, but the Super Nintendo is still my favorite system, by far. I say by far, but definitely of the retro systems, the Super Nintendo is one of my favorite ones. I mean, that's kind of right in the heyday of, what are you, 10, 11 years old, 12 years old, where you kind of really can start your critical thought process, but you're still young enough to have fun, so you can kind of really enjoy puzzle solving and the reward for the games and stuff like that. And that's when we first got into Final Fantasies and that whole deal.
Yeah. The Genesis was actually my favorite first console. Of course, I had a Nintendo. I loved it. But the Genesis is where I really dove deep into it because I was a really big fan of Sonic. I can't tell you how many hours and days I spent on playing Sonic. It was actually a very well put together side-scrolling game. I've got to give them a lot of credit for that. And then to have the graphics that they had on that little bitty 16-bit machine, it was a pretty fantastic little game. And I can remember running that game many, many times and playing that thing to death.
We played it. I hate Sonic, man. I think Sonic is... And they get some hate for this, but I think Sonic is probably one of the most overrated games, and the reason is it changed Sega's whole attitude and personality, and it's a great marketing scheme, and it's a good game. But it's like they side by side to Mario, side by side to Mega Man. These games have excellent controls, and that's why I don't think it's as good a game because it's so okay. Before I even I'm talking about Sonic the Hedgehog 1. Because not 2 or 3 and all this, because I didn't even get into those, but 1, the whole thing was he's real fast and he just blasts this stage. Well, you didn't even know what's going on. You just push forward and like do a little spin and you just watch it. It's like I don't even know what's done. I'm jumping at the right time. He's slippery controls. He's sliding all over. I just didn't really like it that much. It's hard to kind of after playing Mario or something like that. The graphics are great. The music was great. It's a great mascot for Sega. Obviously, he's proven, and people love that game. They still want it. What was the game that just released? Sonic Mania or something like that on Xbox One. And all that?
I think so.
People still demand it, and a lot of people love it. I'm not a fan of it. I don't like it. In fact, that's the only system that I don't collect for is Sega. I got one Sega game that I do have. Oh, you know what it is? Do you know?
No.
It's Shadowrun. I had to get it.
Oh yeah, of course. You were Shadow.
I love Shadowrun.
That was definitely fantastic. Well, I mean, I'd like to do a counterpoint on that because I honestly thought that you have the Marios and the Mega Mans and everything that sucked you into Nintendo and brought you in. I thought that Sonic was a great breakup to that. It wasn't the best game. I'll agree on that. It wasn't because it did have really loose controls, but it was nice to have that change. It was nice to have something brought back in there and actually finally have some competition to the Marios and the Mega Mans. And it was nice to see that change, and it was nice to have a different game than the other two because when you honestly look at it, Mario and Mega Man are really along the same lines of that whole side-scroller type of, jumping platform to platform side-scroller where... Yeah, Sonic is a lot of the same of that, but it threw in a little bit of difference with that whole loose control, the blasting through a board and things like that. So it brought a change to the game to gaming, I think, and I think it was actually a good gaming because you look back at most of the Nintendo games from from that Nintendo era. A majority of them are just side scrollers that are along the same lines as Mario, just reskinned in some different thing with a few different changes, which was fine. I loved it, but Sonic broke it up a little bit. So
yeah, a lot of people like Sonic. There's no doubt that it was a big hit for Sega, and that just kind of set them off. And I think at one point, I'm trying to find it right now, how much of the market share they actually won back from Nintendo, and I think they got 65% of the market in North America for a brief time was the most they got over Nintendo, which was huge. But as soon as Super Nintendo came out, well, let's see, when was that before I start saying it? But
the Sega Genesis actually came out in 1988. Yeah. That's going to be it's actually called the Sega Mega Drive in Japan, and it was of course the Genesis in the US. It's Sega's most successful console with 29 million units sold. At that time, that was pretty big because it probably was well above Nintendo at the time as well. Because Nintendo, of course, they picked up and everything, and they definitely sold the market. But it was definitely neat because, I mean, of course, Genesis had some cool stuff with it. They also had a thing called Power Pad. That was a pretty neat thing that came out with it. So
yeah, they got 65% of market share in North America for a brief time. So they released the Sega CD in Japan in 91 and 92 in North America. So I think the Super Nintendo was out in 91 or 90.
Super Nintendo was in 1990.
Okay.
And, of course, it was Super Famicom, Famicon. Of course, family computer again. And it was SNES here. And it was definitely the best-selling 16-bit console of that era, which, when you look at it, and it's going to sound weird saying this, but the Genesis and Nintendo is actually the fourth generation of gaming. It's hard to believe and hard to think about that that's the fourth generation. A lot of times we think of Nintendo as the first generation. Well, you got Atari that actually started off like the, the Atari 2600 was right there at the very edge of the beginning of the second generation of gaming, of home gaming consoles.
Commodore.
So that was exactly. Coleco. You had like a German-born engineer created a system. They called it the Brown Box. So that was one, and you had ColecoVision and all those different things. But Atari was probably the first jumper, and then you have it going on. Which I'm looking here, I didn't realize that Sega released it's a system called the SG-1000 in 1983. It was only in the Japanese market with minor success, so that's kind of why I guess we didn't hear about it. But that was kind of cool. And then, of course, the Master System was a competitor to the NES, but I really didn't hear much about that either.
You didn't,
that was
and that's a little bit tragic. I mean, some of the games there, and I don't know a whole lot about it, but I've recently seen some videos about the quality of games that it had. The graphics were like twice as better as the NES. I mean, there's no doubt that it had it. And of course, like you said, the Genesis came out a little bit before the NES, or Super Nintendo. And so they automatically had a 16-bit jump on Nintendo before it came out. But anyway, so the Super Nintendo, like I said, was my favorite one. And I don't remember all the games I had. I think I had Final Fantasy 3, of course. That's my favorite game of all time. I had Final Fantasy 2.
I remember one of the first ones you got for it was Final Fantasy 2. Yeah. And I remember you got that for like Easter, if I'm not mistaken.
I did get it for Easter. I can't believe you remember that.
Yeah, because the only reason why I remember that is because I told my mom, I was like, hey, Marcus is getting Final Fantasy 2 for Easter, and I'm only getting a bunch of candy. This is not right. I was like, where's my video game? So my mom was like, Easter's not about gifts, it's about Jesus. And I'm like, no, Mama, Easter's about what I get in my Easter basket, and I don't have Final Fantasy 2 in my Easter basket. So that was kind of a funny little contention point.
I couldn't believe I got
it,
to be honest with you, because I always got candy and stuff, and I'm like, I think I did get one of those little Desert Storm gun before, so that was in 91 or 90, because when Desert Storm kicked off, and it had a battery in it, would automatically kick back, like it had a recoil, and I thought that was so sick. And I was up so early playing that thing, shooting that thing around the house, and my parents had to get up, tell me to stop because it's keeping everybody up. But then next year I think I got the Final Fantasy 2, but that's definitely one of my favorite ones. And Final Fantasy 3 is my all-time favorite. Super Punch-Out! It's a great game on there. I love it. And what other? I always had Mario World, of course, that came with it. F-Zero was the second game I got. Final Fight was the third game I got. I can't believe I remember that.
Yeah,
I actually had Secret of Mana and everything. I had all the good RPGs from Squaresoft. Yeah,
I want to bring up one more game too while I'm thinking about it before we get too far along from the Nintendo, just because of the video game, just because of the movie that came out around it. Super Mario Brothers 3 came out in 1988. And a movie is what made that game big, and I forget what is the name of that movie. The Wizard.
It's one of the greatest marketing schemes
that movie.
Of all time. It's awesome.
And not only in that movie was that and some other games,
Savage.
But exactly, and it had the Power Glove in it. I remember getting a Power Glove Slater. And having that and loved it. Yes, Christian Slater. So it was a great movie.
I got that movie.
If you haven't seen. Yeah. If you haven't seen The Wizard, go watch it. It's a great retro movie. It's great nostalgia. it'll be great. It's just a
relic
good
of the
little
times,
movie to
for
watch.
sure.
Exactly. And I just, looking down here, seeing my list of stuff, I just want to make sure we mention that before we move on, because I think that helped push video gaming into the next step up of the fourth generation with the Genesis and the Super Nintendo and everything like that, because Super Mario Bros. 3 was an awesome...
See, I thought that was the best-selling game of all time. It's probably the best.
It was an awesome step up.
Best-selling standalone game. I can almost guarantee. I think it was for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm gonna look up top-selling games of all time.
Yeah, until you get into the video games now, where video games easily sell 60 million plus copies. Some of these older ones, you're not going to see them hit those things, but if you basically brought them into now times, it probably would.
Of course, Tetris is the best-selling one of all time, which you kind of knew that. Tetris, Minecraft. Where is Mario 3? Can't believe it. We got Mario Wii, New Super Mario Brothers Wii, but it was there for a long time. But anyway, yeah, the Wizard. It was about this kid that's just had like 8. He's probably autistic or something.
Very, very much autistic.
Yeah.
We didn't call it autism back then, or at least it wasn't widely known then. But he was definitely an autistic kid, because he just got so focused in on games and could play games.
He's just like a math whiz.
Amazing, yeah. Basically, he was a savant of gaming.
Yeah.
So a lot of autistic people are savants in something. He just happened to be a savant in gaming.
Mario 3 is the 36th best-selling game of all time right now. But anyway, so he just goes off to California, and he wants to go to California. He just keeps saying, California, California, and they want to take him out there. Fred Savage, they run away from home for whatever reason, I can't remember. And as they're going through home, going to California to this video game competition, they're hustling video games all the way to get there. It's just great. Yeah. They meet this girl along the way, and Christian Slater is his brother, Fred Savage's brother, and the dad... Christian Slater and the dad, they get this truck and they head out. They're staying in hotels, and of course Christian Slater brings us the Nintendo and they hook it up and play it. I'm playing Ninja Turtles, and then the dad gets hooked on it, But anyway, they get to the thing about it at the end of it was that they played a game that nobody's ever seen before. The competition, nobody's ever seen, and it was Mario Brothers 3. So everybody got a sneak peek of that game before it came out, and that was a big deal.
That was awesome. I remember watching the movie before the game came out, and I was like, "Oh, I gotta get that game so bad."
Oh yeah.
And I don't think I got it until after it had already been out for a little bit. But it was just one of those exciting moments, because it was really neat and a really inventive way to release a game. And of course, back then you don't have spoilers like you have now. And oh my God, just don't get me started about that right now, because I could strangle people right now about Destiny 2 spoilers. But I'll get into that later. But it's a fantastic way to market a game. So
they don't do it anymore, because you start thinking about it, because how much does it cost to make a movie? You're talking for that movie. I mean, probably, I have no idea, $50 million or something. I don't know how in today's money.
It probably,
so they did all that money to release it. But you see what they did. If you go back and watch it now, you can really see what they did. They have a lot of ads that are kind of hidden in there. Like, they get lost running around Universal Studios, so they go to all the little rides as they chase them through there, and it's just advertising all the stuff that Universal Studios has in Hollywood, which is that's pretty clever. But anyway, yeah, so that's a fun movie to really will bring you back to the 90s with the Power Glove, and Lucas is the big villain, has the Power Glove, and nobody's ever seen it before. Comes out of a big case, smoke comes out, and she's like, what has he got? That's the Power Glove. It's so rad, or something like that. It's so bad.
Yeah, because that was really the first introduction to the Power Glove you got as well. So
yeah, nobody said it's his glove. I can drive like I'm driving punching a punch out, and drive like I'm playing Rad Racer, like I'm really driving. But it was weird. That thing was terrible, by the way. I tried to use that thing, and you had to hold your hand completely flat for like some games like Mario, and you push down your pointer finger to run, and then you jump, with your middle finger or something. It's just so weird.
It was crazy.
You ended up just using the gamepad on the top of it, the whole time.
Oh yeah, that's all I ended up doing. It was terrible. You never could get it. You never could get it to do right. So
that's funny. But anyway, yeah. So back to the Super Nintendo. After Final Fight, I had Secret of Mana. Like I said, I think I had Secret of Mana. I know I had Secret of Mana, Illusions of Gaia, Final Fantasy 3, which is 6, 3 in America, Final Fantasy 2, which would be 4. I know I had some more. I thought I was kind of big into those role playing games, and when you had time to sit down and play them. And in point of fact, I remember this. I sold all my stuff, and even the deal with you that we talked about in the first episode, where you gave me all the stuff. I said, I'll give you all my Super Nintendo stuff. You give me all your Sega stuff. However, I'm going to keep Final Fantasy 6.
Exactly.
Like, all right, cool, deal. And then so I still kept it around forever.
You had I think you had it. You had the Super Scope.
No, I didn't. I never had the Super Scope.
Then I had it. Then I knew one of the two of us had it, and so I remember us having that too. Something interesting too, because handheld gaming was kind of a thing too, and I totally forgot this and didn't realize that it was 1989 that the Game Boy came out. And it came out along with Tetris, and it was bundled with Tetris. So that's why it sold so many, because it was an awesome thing. I mean, this is an amazing stat. The Game Boy, the first original Game Boy, sold 118 million units worldwide. Jeez. I did not realize it sold that many. That's an amazing. Yep. And 89 was when the Power Glove came out too. So that's 89 is when the Power Glove came out. The Wizard came out in 89. It all came out around the same time. So
this is sick. I'm looking at the stats here, talking about the 4th best-selling game. What do you think the second best-selling game is? You got to know what it is if you thought about it for a minute. I didn't think about it. If I was put on the spot, I couldn't think about it probably, but.
Nah, you just put me on the spot.
Well, I know. I was just seeing how Minecraft, of course.
Well, yeah, you said it earlier, too. It was Minecraft. So.
And so Tetris is number 1, Minecraft, then Wii Sports, which came with the Wii. And then the 4th one is doubles, almost, the sales of the 5th one, which is Super Mario Brothers. The 5th one is Super Mario, so the 4th one actually doubles. Super Mario Brothers sold 40.2 million. This one sold 80 million standalone and released in 2013 from Rockstar. Grand Theft Auto 5, of course.
That's impressive.
Absolutely.
It's impressive stats.
And Wii Sports is 82 million. Minecraft is 122 million.
Which Minecraft is actually...
It's a standalone.
So Minecraft... It's a standalone, but it's cheap. It's not the same price as other games. So that kind of, to me, gives it a competitive edge. Yeah, so Minecraft, with it being that lower cost game, I could very easily see it selling a lot more. Because, I mean, most games you're paying 40, 50, 60 bucks for. Whereas Minecraft, you paid 20 bucks, 30 bucks tops, I think, was the most it ever cost.
A lot of people talk about that, too, when it comes to systems and games as well, where they finally systems $400, but they dropped it down to $300, so now it sells better. And it's like, if you can't afford a $400 system, why all of a sudden $300 you can? It's just, how much does that really help? That's my question, and I know that it helps people. They always sell more when they lower the price. I just don't.
Well, let's take the PS3 for instance. It's the one that's most notorious for coming out with a stupid high price, at least in recent memory. You do have some others like Neo Geo and all those other ones that were stupid priced then, but the one most recent that a lot of people are gonna think of is the PS3. It came out at a $599 price point, $600 for this thing. And people bought it, but it started selling better once they dropped the price down, mainly because it had competitors that were at lower price points. When you look at the 360 that came out around the same time, it was at a lower price point, and so it sold better. Well, for it to be able to compete, it had to drop the price. I think what happened is Sony got a little too money hungry, which they have been notorious for doing that in the past, and that's why some of the systems had some flutters in there with price and everything. So, but it's one of those things where it eventually tapered out, and you saw the sales of the PS3 pick up. But I don't want to get too far into that because we're going to start covering those later. But that's just just for a thought of saying, that whole price drop thing, because I totally get it, okay, oh wow, the game system just dropped $50. Why can I afford it now versus later? It doesn't really mean a thing. People like to save money. That's really all it boils down to.
Why would you spend?
People, they're thinking they're getting a deal.
You either want the system
oh my gosh,
or
it's
not.
$50 off.
Exactly.
And
I wonder if a lot of that's kind of, I don't know. I don't know anything about marketing system, but
it's a lot to do with
where, hey, okay, a lot of games are out now, so now I want one. So
exactly.
That's what I think.
You get it's pretty much that. It's basically a marketing ploy to get people to buy it because you have games that people want. You see that they're hot sellers. You see that they're popular games that are taking off, and so you have that kind of push to go through it. During the time of the PS3 and the 360, Rock Band was a huge game, and Guitar Hero. Well, those were coming out like crazy, and I noticed that prices on the system were dropping more during those times than they had any other time before. So you just have things like that kind of do that. But
Tetris, 170 million is the most. That's a lot. That's over half the people in the U.S.
It's a lot.
That's
a lot of games.
But this is a weird one though. That's at the top 50. Check this one out. So you got stuff like, Diablo 3, Elder Scrolls 5, Pokemon, San Andreas, Mario Kart DS, and out of nowhere, what sold better than Mario Kart DS, what sold better than Pokemon Gold and Silver, which sold better than Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, Mario World, Call of Duty Ghost, is a little game called Nintendogs.
Oh my gosh!
Right in 21.
Oh my
Nintendo
gosh.
DS 2005 23.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that.
What in the world?
That was what 2001 is what you said.
2005. It was
2005 when that
21st.
came out?
Yeah, that's the.
Okay, so I can kind of get that because that was about the time that you saw a lot of younger kids gaming again. Because you had younger parents at that time. I mean, 2005. I hate to say this, I hate to bring this up. That was when my first marriage, 2005. So you had people that were my age.
You got a lot of dogs too.
That already had kid. Yeah.
So
I had a lot of cats. I didn't have a lot of dogs. I had a lot of cats. But
both of them.
I had a lot of animals. Period. That was a crazy situation. I should have never got into it. But hey, that's in the past. But you had people putting game systems and things in their kids' hands, and you started having this whole change of culture because that was when cell phones were getting a lot bigger. I remember around 2005, 2006 when the Motorola Razr came out. That was one of the biggest selling cell phones. It was stupid popular, and it was probably one of the best phones because it was almost as good as the Nokia Brick. I just call it the Brick because it was the one you could throw against the wall, pick it up, throw it in the water, whatever. It stayed great. Oh yeah, the Snake. that game. Don't get me started on that.
Where's that on
this
best-selling list here? It's Snake.
It was a free game, so I guess it doesn't call it. I guess they don't call it best-selling, but and so I kind of can reason out why Nintendogs would probably be up there, but it's a game I've never played.
I cannot reason that.
Very rarely heard of. This is probably the second time I've heard of it, and so it's just kind of one of those weird. That's really weird.
Probably the best game, But
so
anyway, so those are the games. A lot of the Nintendo early releases on of their consoles really made a mark on a lot of people our age and kind of kept us in the game. And it's kind of interesting to see in the future, since Nintendo, they just came out with a Switch, so are they going to be a big player in the generation now that was our age when they first came out? And when the generation that's playing PlayStation 4 and all this, when they get older, are they going to have the fond memories that we do and still want a video game, still want a game for, like we do now?
Yeah.
So... But they just made, or if it's just a unique thing because Nintendo left such a mark on us. That's just interesting to think about.
Yeah. And then something else I want to bring up too. I want to go ahead and, since we sat in the fourth generation there for a little while, hit the fifth generation just to kind of highlight it because there's actually something in there that's a couple big things we've actually kind of talked about.
So before we go to the fifth gen, Sega CD.
Okay.
Does that count as a next gen, or does that count as a? That's a weird thing.
I don't know. It's really weird because I don't know if it's next gen or not. I don't know if it would be considered that. I mean, the way they have it listed in this is it's not next gen, but I could see it as a kind of.
Because it was.
I kind of see it like the I kind of see it like the PS4 and the PS4 Pro. It's a step up, but it's not a new generation.
Yeah, it was still
it kind
of
enhances something like that.
And it just had.
I mean, the CD
video.
was still. Yeah, the CD was still 16-bit as well.
That's
the Sega CD was still 16-bit, but you got a little better graphics in it and everything too. Which I mean, basically, if you remember the crappy phone webcams, the phone cams that we had back in the early 2000s, that's the kind of graphics you got on the Sega CD. It was just that kind of loose, scratchy kind of graphics. Because I remember what was a Sewer Shark that we played on that one. And that was a fantastic.
You just like watching.
It was a fantastically terrible game. That's the best way I can put it, because it had terrible controls, but it was fun to watch, and it was so awesome back then because it was so new.
It's pretty much a 16-bit system,
awesome,
with full motion video and better music quality, CD quality.
Exactly.
So then they had to release a 32X because so before that. Super Nintendo stayed going for quite a while, and I believe it was 96 when the Nintendo 64 came out.
Yep.
So Sega had already said we're going to do a 32-bit Saturn, and then they're going to release a 32X, and everybody's like, why would I buy this? We know the Saturn's coming out, and
you're jumping way ahead there. Hang on one second there. This is going to throw you off because I didn't realize this too until I'm looking at this timeline. So, wait, hold on. They don't even have the Sega Saturn on this timeline. Sorry. 94 was in the Sega Saturn came out.
94, 5, yeah.
Which is funny because the Sega Saturn and the Sega 32X come out in the same year. I know.
See, so that right there was the killer of Sega, I think, because they just said, what do they have all this market? That's what they said. They had all this market share. All they had to do was nothing, and they did everything. Oh, yeah. They did everything to mess it up. They tried to do
too much. Well, they wanted to keep the Sega Genesis relevant because they had so much on the Genesis, but then they wanted to bring a new system out as well. Because I remember getting the Sega Saturn and the 32X. I remember getting both of them.
Well, I will say this. I will say this about Sega that I do admire, because back then it seemed like an eternity, but like we just said. Super Nintendo came out in 90, so 6 years later, Nintendo 64 came out. That seemed like an eternity when you're 10 years old. Yeah. That's nothing now. And and so what does Sega try to do? They try to extend the life of one. They say, if you buy our product, we're going to honor that product forever. So I have never heard anybody give it that kind of twist on it. So we're going to, you can still play your games. This next system is just going to be an add-on. It saves you money. It's a little bit better of an upgrade. So if you kind of got with us to begin with, and we're going to honor that, as a customer, we're going to take care of you.
But do you remember the kicker to the whole system?
What system?
You could put CD? The Sega CD, and the 32X. So if you had the original Sega Genesis, which I did, you could hook a Sega CD up to it, no problem. But you could not hook a 32X up to it. It had to be I think it's the third.
It was the second generation, but you could. The second generation Sega automatically worked, but you could hook up. You couldn't hook it up out of the box to it. You had to get an adapter for the back, and you had to have. There's like some metal prong type things you put into the game disc, but
so there was actually two versions of the Sega CD that came out. One was a Sega CD that actually attached to the side, which was for the original Genesis, and then there was a bottom mount. Yeah, then there was a bottom mount Sega CD for the second edition Genesis.
So we had the side.
They had the
side one.
We had a side one, and I actually at one time had a bottom one as well.
It stopped working.
Yeah, it did stop working. Yeah, that one was junk. It was junk. The bottom one was actually worse than the side one. The side one was actually better.
Yeah. I remember the side one. I remember the 32X, and it had Doom, and that's all I wanted to play on it. Because I was never a big PC gamer. That's where Doom was, real popular, of course. And we won't even get into PC, so I'll cut PC off right there. But but Doom, that's how I played Doom, and I enjoyed it. Yeah, I thought it was awesome.
Me too.
That's kind of my first one with it. And if you played it on anything else, you would probably think, oh, that's a terrible one, but I liked it. I liked that port of it. But
so an interesting note too, just to think about it, since we have kind of started touching into the 5th generation, since we're talking about the Saturn, the 32X, and everything like that. In '94, Sony actually finally stepped into the game and dropped the PlayStation. I didn't realize it was '94 that the PlayStation dropped, but that's pretty cool because they actually kind of, it's a third player in the game now. You've got Sega, Sony, and Nintendo in the game, and that was a nice curveball play there for them too. So,
well, do you remember how that got started? They the NES. Okay, so the Super NES was developed. If you look on the bottom of your Super NES, there's actually an expansion.
Yeah, because they were actually it was supposed to be it was supposed to be called Nintendo CD. Basically, they wanted to have a CD drive of it. But it failed miserably, and PlayStation or Sony, which was actually part of it. If you go and look it up now, you can actually find there's 2 of them in the world, if I'm not mistaken. There's not many of them in the world. It's the rarest console that you can find right now. Some guy just recently found one to make it to where it's 2 in the world known. And it's got PlayStation on the front of it, and it hooks into a Super Nintendo. It's actually really pretty cool looking, and I wish they would have pushed it, but I'm glad they didn't, because now we actually have a PlayStation against a Nintendo. So
that was that's a prototype. So what happened was they went into talks with Sony to do a CD based add-on, just like Sega, to compete with Sega, and So they went up to this video game expo, and I don't know where it was, but this is, this is video game history or whatever. Everybody that's a real hardcore collector knows this story probably. But there's so they went up to the whatever expo they were at, and Nintendo announced in front of everybody. Sony had no idea this was going on. They were now going to make a CD-based add-on with Magnavox CDI. And so Sony, like, what? They get a slap in the face in front of everybody. It's embarrassing. So then they go on to make the Sega, or the Sony PlayStation, and that's the rest is history. In fact, I just read that Sony is selling 100,000 PlayStation 4s a week worldwide now. So
yes,
but
PlayStation 4 is probably going to end up being one of the hottest video game systems ever.
So they woke a sleeping giant, basically, and so that's where you got CDI from. That's probably one of the worst selling consoles, and that's when you got those crappy Marios, those crappy Zeldas. Because they said, okay, well, you can use our first party titles, and then we'll go into the business with you somehow, and that just fell through, and that was terrible. So, and of course, Nintendo goes on to the Nintendo 64. We're going to stay cartridge based. Why would you do that? Everybody's going to CD. Well, it's really for pirating, and it could have been a little bit about it. Well, we're not going to go CD because we know better, and we're not going to let Sony think that they won. I don't know what they're thinking, but it could have been that.
Well, from one of the stories I actually hear, this is actually where Nintendo actually had their big drop, because from the
absolutely.
From the 64 down to the GameCube is 2 of their worst selling systems. One, the 64 only sold 33 million units, and the GameCube only 21 million units. So that shows you right there that was their 2 worst selling units up to this point. I don't have the stats on the Wii and the Wii U, which Wii was stupid crazy seller, and the Wii U wasn't far behind it.
Well, there's a lot of debate on whether the Nintendo 64 was actually a good system or not.
Well, the Nintendo 64, what Nintendo basically did was they wanted to say, hey, look, we're the big guys. You got to beat us. We don't have to beat you. And they kind of got lazy, because it's like, okay, well, we don't really have to change the architecture of our systems or anything like that. All we have to do is develop something that can handle a little more horsepower and a cartridge that can hold more. So they didn't really have to really re-engineer anything. They just reused stuff and made the Nintendo 64. In the end, it shot them in the foot big time. I mean, they came out with the alien, funky-looking controller. Even to this day, I still think it's the worst controller ever developed. The joystick in it broke so quick. I remember time and time again having to go to Walmart, buy another $20 aftermarket controller because I'd break the stick, and I can't tell you how many $20 that I had to blow on these controllers, and plus it had the 4 plugins in the front, so that was really weird as well.
The 4 plugins was revolutionary because it was 4-player couch, co-op, which nobody did. You had to buy these special add-ons and stuff, so they did that so the things that we know for sure that it did better than anybody was the 4-player couch co-op. So that was kind of a great system for buddies to play. I mean, we all played GoldenEye a million times together. Yeah. We played Mario Kart, which is a lot of fun, Mario Party all the time. But they also were the pioneer for the actual to do 3D. I mean, they did Mario 3D, which basically crushed. I mean, or Mario 64, not Mario 3D, but it was a 3D Mario. The first 3D Mario 64, is one of my favorite games to this day. It's probably one of my favorite Marios. But not even talking from a fanboy perspective, but just that was one of the first real 3D games that actually did anything and basically paved the way and set the standard for 3D games. So those are things that
something else too. Another game that was in that whole realm was a step up in that. And I hate to bring it up on this podcast because we're trying to keep everything clean, but Conker's Bad Fur Day.
Yeah, well, that was big for Nintendo to do that.
It was a fantastic game. It was a step out of Nintendo's realm of being family friendly because it was one of the first mature based games that they put out and pushed out. I mean, yeah, they had Killer Instinct, Mortal Kombat, and all this by then, but those games don't deserve a mature rating like Conker's Bad Fur Day did. Conker's Bad Fur Day hit every bad point it possibly could.
For the sake of hitting the bad points. But it was funny.
Exactly.
I never played it.
It was hilarious.
Funny, yeah.
It was hilarious. And the reason why it was one of my favorite games for the 64 is because it pushed boundaries and it showed what a gaming system could do, because it was actually one of the better 3D graphical games of the Nintendo 64, in my opinion. It was a lot of fun. It had a lot of twists in there. And the funny thing is it incorporated different movies, because it had incorporated Aliens in there. It incorporated World War II in there. It incorporated just all kinds of just different random stuff, along with just debauchery at its best. It was pretty. It really was. I mean, it was a fuzzy little squirrel doing terrible things, but it was hilarious too, So it's just kind of one of those things where it was that, because I remember my mom actually had to pay for the game for me because I wasn't 17 yet, and you had to have somebody 17 or older to buy the game. I think I do still have it somewhere, maybe.
Yeah, it's like $100. Worth $100 now.
So, it's a fantastic game. It's hilarious and crazy, and just one of those games you need to check out if you get a chance.
Yes, it's one of the rare ones because it's so expensive, and like you said, it's one of those revolutionary Nintendo games, or for Nintendo to do that. It's also made by Rare, which Rare, they made GoldenEye, they made Killer Instincts, they made the Donkey Kong Country series, and they are just one of the best publishers.
They were great at doing those first generation 3D graphic games.
Yeah.
They did a great job of that, because I remember playing Donkey Kong Country and Diddy Kong and all of that, and they were fun games. They were annoying as all get out, but they were fun games.
For sure.
Exactly. It basically was the first run of games that were like, oh my gosh, I will never beat this game kind of runs. But 64 was, it was a good and bad system in different points, because I remember being in college playing Super Smash Brothers. That's the one game that came from the Nintendo 64 era that actually was a really major game for them, because Super Smash Brothers, they had it on that. They had Super Smash Brothers Melee on the GameCube. They even got some new versions out that I haven't played yet, but that was a great kind of kickoff for them as well.
So again, we have some fond memories of the Nintendo 64, but there's a lot of debate. I mean, if you take somebody now that's never played it and go back and play it, they're probably like, this is terrible. So let's just see right now. Can you name 10 good games that you remember on the Nintendo 64? 10.
Let's try this. Conker's Bad Fur Day. Super Smash Brothers. Donkey Kong Country.
Okay. Donkey Kong.
Diddy Kong Country.
Well, no, that's on Nintendo, Super Nintendo. They only had Donkey Kong 64.
Donkey Kong 64. Okay, that was a good one. You're gonna have Mario 64. Yep. Yeah, I'm probably burned out there.
You're gonna get a lot of people upset, and I can tell you. So let me see if I can name. I got Mario 64.
You probably can do a little better than me.
I like Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, of course.
Forgot about that.
Majora's
I like that
Mask. One too. Those are three right there. And like you said, Bad Fur Day. I never played Donkey Kong 64. I don't think it was that good game. But Banjo-Kazooie, GoldenEye.
Yeah, that was a good one. Golden.
Did I already say Killer Instinct? The Killer Instinct Gold. No, I didn't say that one yet.
The Killer Instinct Gold. Yeah.
Let's see. Yes, I mean that's where you start getting. I liked Shadows of the Empire, and I liked Rogue Squadron. We both had those.
Yes, yeah, those were two good games.
And I wouldn't consider it a good game now, but I loved it. It was WCW Revenge.
Oh gosh,
that was an awesome game.
Well, it was nostalgia. Yeah. So yeah, there's our 10 games, guys. There's our 10.
You're struggling to do that. I mean, you probably couldn't name 20, so what was the library? 100 something, 200 something games, I think. Let's see.
Yeah, I think I probably played less than half the library on Nintendo 64, to be honest. Yeah, I played a lot, but
a lot of sports games.
Yeah, and I didn't play too many sports games on the 64. I didn't really start doing sports games until the PS2. I did a little bit on the PS1,
games,
but yeah. So I probably played 40 to 50 of those titles. So
yeah, I mean, I don't know how to do this yet. How to find this, but to do a quick search for how many of these are sports games would be, ridiculous. 1080 snowboarding was a great game. You had that one, yeah.
That. Yeah, I had 1080 snowboarding. I remember that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and then what was the other one I just saw that I remembered? Turok was one of that was a fun one at first. The controls are very strange, but here's a weird one and I just bought this one I never played it back in the day, but I bought this. It was like a cheap price. I tried out. It was Asteroid 64. And it's just the little ship, and you're spinning around shooting asteroids, and it's just got an appeal to it. It's real addicting.
What about Earthbound? Was Earthbound on 64, or was that a different? Or was that
Super Nintendo?
Super Nintendo. Okay. I couldn't remember Earthbound. So
yeah, and they had the Castlevanias come out, the 3D Castlevanias, and they were not good.
No, they were not fun because I think they even had a Ninja Gaiden in 3D at some point, and that wasn't that hot either, not in my opinion.
They had Daikatana come out for 64. You remember that John Romero game?
Yeah.
So John Romero broke off, and he had this whole ad campaign. He broke off of ID Software from John Carmack. Yeah. They made Doom and Wolfenstein and all. They had a great thing going. Had what was the wow? I just draw a blank on it. And I see it in my head right now. What was the big tournament? It's a first person shooter. Quake. That's what I'm trying to think of.
Quake. Yeah.
They made Quake. And so, by the way, so I'm getting sidetracked. But they made that. John Romero broke off and made Daikatana. It was a terrible game. He had everybody hyped up. Everybody was so good. Thought it was going to be the greatest game. It was terrible. A big flop. But it's actually out on Nintendo 64. So, but anyway, the Doom. I do have to say this. The Doom on PlayStation 4 is cheap now. It's like $30. That if you have not played that game, you need to go get that game. That is a phenomenal game. That is one of the most underrated games there is. It's even got a multiplayer that's old school. You get shot up, you get health packs and all this. And I didn't play a lot of the multiplayer, but the single player campaign to go through there, I platted it, man. I loved every minute of it. I mean, that is a phenomenal game. I'm excited about the Wolfenstein coming out, but just try it. You will get addicted quick.
So just before we're still in the 5th generation and we're creeping up on an hour of talking. You can tell fine. We can easily dive into this, but that's no big deal, guys. Hang in there with us. We're going to finish this up soon too. But just to point out this one game that is, if it's not your all-time favorite game, it's pretty high up there. Final Fantasy VII was in 1997.
Yeah.
And it's hard to think it was that long ago.
Yes, it's 20 years ago.
Feels like it was just the other day that game came out because it was a fantastic game. It was great. and that was on just the regular PlayStation. I can't believe that was just on PlayStation.
Yeah, I bought a PlayStation from a friend of mine, or a friend of ours, Mitch.
Yeah.
And before he wanted to sell his, and then I didn't have the money for it. I think he wanted $150 for it. And I was in Jackson with my girlfriend at the time, and they had sold Final Fantasy, and I bought it. I didn't even have a PlayStation. It's like, I got to get it. It's just, I love Final Fantasy. That came out after Final Fantasy 6, of course, but it was 3. So we go from Final Fantasy 3 in America, then it finally catches back up with the Japanese lettering. Final Fantasy 7, so I called Mitch on the way back. I said, dude, look, I'll give you some of the money, man. Let me just have it, and then I'll give you the rest later. He's like, yeah, sure, no problem. Man, I went crazy, dude. I thought I was in heaven for that game.
I remember that. And then, too, because we mentioned this game earlier, its very first edition came out in 97, was Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah,
I remember getting that original Grand Theft Auto. Yeah. That was so much fun. It was a flat, it was pretty much almost like a side scroller, but it was flat. The whole point of the game really more or less was drive a car really fast around there. I mean, that was, you could do some of the side stuff, but no, you had to get a car, get on the motorcycle.
But there is a story.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just so, can't even keep up with it. And you walk around and you shoot the pistol, and it's one little white dot that comes out from the front of you.
It was hilarious.
You get in the bus. That's my favorite part. If you get in the bus and drive it, it never slows down. I never got into a straightaway to where it stops slowing down.
No, you don't.
And you can slam through everything.
That bus.
But it was fun.
Oh, yeah.
But then Grand Theft Auto 2 came out, and it's the exact same thing.
Exactly. It was just in England. It was set in England versus the U.S., I think.
It was a little bit better graphics, but it was not... You would think it wasn't the Grand Theft Auto 3, of course. But anyway.
Yeah, it wasn't until Grand Theft Auto 3 that Grand Theft Auto really picked up. So I want to mention one other game system before we move on to the 6th generation, which will start hitting Xbox and all that in the 6th generation, is the Dreamcast. And the reason why I want to mention the Dreamcast is because Hollywood had a Dreamcast. I never got a Dreamcast, but I remember Hollywood having the Dreamcast. And I cannot remember the name of the game that he loved on that, but he'll have to mention that one. But that game was kind of revolutionary because it has this great story to it.
Oh, I know what you're.
And then all of a sudden it ends.
I remember having. I know I had one, but I barely remember having it.
Is that Yakuzumi or something like that?
It's Yakuza. It's not called.
Well, Yakuza is a different.
But it's the same.
It's a different game.
So it's called Shimu.
Yes.
But Yakuza kind of took the ball and ran with what Shimu was trying to be.
Yeah, so Shimu was really cool because it had this great storyline. The only thing that I didn't like about it was the fact that when you went to fight, instead of actually you doing the fighting or anything in it, you'd have to press a button to dodge or kick or whatever and kind of press these combos to do it. So it's really kind of neat. But the thing is you go to fight the last boss. You don't know it's the last boss, but it's the last boss in the middle of nothing. That's my dog. Like I said, I apologize, guys, for all the random sounds you're going to hear, but, I got 2 dogs that kind of are crazy. This one here, she's been bad lately. She ate a book just recently, so she's in kind of
timeout. She's trying to throw up or dying over there, man.
Oh, no, she just whines like that, so. But, Shishimi was really cool for that, and so she... So that game, that game was just a really neat game and had a really cool concept, except for the fact that it literally ends in the middle of nothing. It just ends, and you're like, well, aren't I supposed to get on this boat to go over here to do more? Well, they have a Shishimi 2, and the director that wrote Shishimi 1 and 2, he's actually in the process of writing Shishimi 3.
Yeah.
So hopefully one day it'll come out to actually finally finish the story.
I don't think it's ever going to happen.
Games that are generations in the making.
So it's supposed to be like a 6 or 8 part series. I can't remember, but he came out with the one. It just cost way too much money because he was so meticulous, and that's what I loved about it. I love the Asian culture and stuff, and that's kind of why I got into that. You're walking around the city or the little village in Japan, and like real time stuff happens. It starts to rain. In fact, the weather was real for that time period. I believe it was based in 86 or something. So whatever day it was, September 9th, 1986, the weather on the game was the exact weather that it was really in 1986 in that part of the city or whatever. And so it was really cool like that. And it had the quick time events where you just push a button, but you did have the regular fighting too. It was it was no Batman, but I mean, like, it was close enough for that time. But I just like the whole immersion of into that culture, which was really cool. But
it was real cool.
Yeah. So anyway, they've been talking about the guy's going to make more, but it never really took off. I think it's actually dead now.
Yeah. Well, no. He's actually in the process of writing Shishimi 3. So I don't know if it will ever actually make it to the game, but he actually has it. He's what was there? The last time I heard, they said
it's supposed to release December 2017, but
yeah, it's supposed to release like into this year, first of next year. Because I even heard they were pushing it back a little bit because of his development. But basically, he's supposed to, technically, from what I've heard, he's supposed to wrap it up in Shishimi 3.
Yeah, he needs to, but that's great news. I didn't know that. So. I knew that listening to some older, a few years ago, podcast or just doing some stuff on YouTube or whatever. I know that he got shot down a few times for trying to do this.
Yeah.
Just wasn't enough. I think he tried to do a Kickstarter and it just wasn't enough people or something. I don't know what happened, but I'm glad he's doing it. I love that game. But I've been meaning to get the Yakuza and trying to. They said that's supposed to be a phenomenal game. I haven't played any of them. But anyway, so Dreamcast. It is definitely gotta have a huge cult following. In fact, you can even buy new Dreamcast games now from people that are programming their own. And it was and that's one of the reasons they say that it failed, which there's many reasons why, and we can get that into the later, but it's just a CD-R. You can get a CD-R and write a Sega Dreamcast game on it and play it, burn them or whatever. But
and this is an interesting fact too to bring up too, just kind of to talk about the Dreamcast is it was considered to be way ahead of its time and a pioneer of online gaming. It was one of the first gaming systems that had online gaming in it. I remember with wasn't it the Super Nintendo had that
X-Band.
Yeah, X-Band to it.
So by the way, so they had X-Band. The Dreamcast had a modem that you could buy to add on to it. It never came. It may have come with. I think eventually it did come with an Ethernet port toward the end of its life cycle, or an Ethernet add-on. But the first online was a modem that you could buy with it. Mm-hmm. But X-Band, I'm glad you bring that up. That is something. I bet. How many people do you think listen to this don't even know what that is?
Probably not many, and I think that might be a good thing to save for our next one to continue on to this, because I think X-Band and that kind of revolution might be a good thing to talk about.
Okay, we'll talk about X-Band next time. Yeah, we're over about an hour and 10 minutes, and so yeah, we'll use another one. We might, whenever we release the next one about this, we're going to pick up from 5th Gen. But I do definitely want to talk about X-Band next time. That was a unique,
that was way ahead of time.
And I was hardcore
into it. It really was.
But
I remember how hardcore you were, and I'll definitely bring up some of the memories I have of that on our next one. We talk about it. So
all right, cool. Well, just check back. We're going to release these every week, and so next week you might get a Destiny. You want to do Destiny next, or you want to do X-Band next?
I say let's roll on with this and give us some time to play Destiny. I want to be able to give our listeners a really nice, good review of Destiny.
Okay.
And with me in the middle of doing house renovations and moving, I don't know how much time I'll be able to put into Destiny, but I can surely talk about retro games all day long. So let's get a good playthrough on Destiny 2. Let's at least try to get to where we're light level high enough for the raid. Get up to that point before we do another Destiny run, which it should take us about a week or so to pull that
so next
off,
week we'll do we'll just pick up for X-Band and the 5th Gen on for the systems and games, and then after that we'll release Destiny 2. So I may go back in the beginning of this and switch it up, but whatever. Right. So cool. All right. Well, appreciate you guys listening in. Hope you stuck around for the whole thing. And we will catch you guys next week.
Yeah, see y'all guys next week.
Later.